Hey folks, Andy here from Andy McSweeney Photography and Photo Tour Brugge. Also, my sidekick is over here. Hey sidekick. Blake, the tour mascot, our child, is here to join me for this video, so hi buddy. Yeah, he's not that thrilled about the video side of things. Anyways gang, I'm here to talk about the Fujifilm GF 250mm f4 LM ROIS telephoto lens. I've already got it fitted on also with the 1.4 teleconverter, so we get that extra reach when needed. And of course, I'm giving it the full badassery by having the lens hood directly on there and waiting. It's a really fine lens. I got to borrow it for the last 3 weeks from Fujifilm Belgium, and while it wasn't the lens that I went to the most, because, well, frankly, I'm more of a wide-angle shooter, I did run it through the paces here and there, and I wanted to talk about it briefly, and, you know, just show you a few images that I pulled from this guy. All right, well, for the first impressions, I mean, I think obviously big and a little bit tough looking. Fortunately, just like Blake, who could care less about this video, it looks tough on the outside, but it's real soft and delicious on the inside. So lots of goodness going on. And even though this is almost a kilogram of weight, especially with the teleconverter, well, you know, you're going to be carrying around a lot, but just like Blake, when he doesn't feel like listening and pulls on the lead, there's still a lot of love to go around and reasons to put up with it all. So that's opening thoughts. If you're thinking about like build quality, construction, handling, I think that's very much worth a mention. I mean, on the build quality side, it's obviously right up there in the GFX standard of things that Fujifilm insists on with their GFX lenses. It's all weather sealed, it's all metal, it's very, very smooth to work with. Whether we're talking, I mean, just the basic nuts and bolts of the aperture dial, clicking nice and smooth when I need it to, and the focus ring, especially just feeling really just correct, properly dampened, and I never hit any weird juts or, you know, pauses in the operation. So I think that's really fantastic. And then just next to that, I mean, when you look at this thing a little more extensively, you see you have 3 little dials here, one of which is your focus limiter for certain situations where you want to reduce the focal range. You have your OIS anti-stabilization, pro stabilization switch, which goes up to 5 stops, which is certainly handy with this particular focal length. And down the bottom, we have our autofocus modes. You can basically preset them or just use what the camera thinks is best. And that's also where you get to the last of the buttons and dials here, because you can see there's a little set button just next to that. And up the top of the lens, we have 4 buttons. When I program in the focus mode that I need, or the distance, if you will, then that button and those 4 buttons will automatically click over to there when I apply that. So I think that's a really handy feature. And certainly with a lens like this, you're going to have occasions where you're towards the end of the lens with your handling. So really thoughtful of Fuji, and I mean, just shows overall what kind of quality and thoughtfulness you can expect from this lens. The only thing I can say really next to that on handling is, well, you've got your tripod collar, so that works out well. I mean, obviously you can tick in something there, and I did more than once. You can easily take it off just by loosening and clicking, which I won't do because, well, we got the dog in a canal right there. But believe you me, guys, turn, click, and then it pops off. And that also applies, of course, to rotating on the fly. One thing I would say in the handling as far as the tripod collar mount goes is, and this was pointed out by a review that I read, and I'm going to give them fair credit because I didn't quite notice it. So look for this link, and they mentioned how it's a little tricky to get a couple fingers under the tripod collar mount in the sense of just being able to walk around with the lens like that. With this weight, it's a useful thing to have. So I think it's only the real niggle that I can think of. But having said that, I didn't really notice it till I noticed that review mention it. So food for thought. Handling wise, I'm pretty happy. Everything plays out like I expect it to. And yeah, lots of good as far as just the basics of it all. Next to that, we get into the optics. I mean, that's the really good stuff going on here. We have quite a few elements at play, and, well, they look good doing it. It's, as I mentioned, also got stabilization, so you have a 5-stop safety net there as far as your stabilization goes, as long as you activate that. And, well, just, you know, I mean, this sort of comes into the performance and, to an extent, handling for me. When it comes to the autofocus, I was really pleasantly surprised for a medium format system, just how snappy it was in a lot of cases. On the flip side of thing, optically, and again, this all sort of interrelates to the performance, I wouldn't have minded if it could focus a little closer. I mean, you lose even more with the teleconverter, but just on its own, you've got a 5-meter distance there before you can start getting focus and range. So that, for me, especially with this being minded as a portrait lens, I think is acceptable, but to be honest, I like to get a little bit closer to my subject. And of course, I can always spook them a little less by just popping off the lens hood, but not throwing it in the canal. That would be expensive. So, moving on from there, we're still in optics, I think. I mean, the Bokeh is really pleasing. It's going to be a major consideration for this particular lens, and even with medium format, it's sometimes why we buy into it. So I can say the Bokeh or Bokeh or background blur, whatever you want to call it, it looks extremely pleasant all the way through from f4 to f32. I did notice, of course, with the teleconverter that there was a slight drop in the optical quality, and of course, you'll go from an f4 minimum aperture to 5.6, so just be ready for that. But even with the teleconverter on there at 5.6, I was still extremely pleased with how the Bokeh worked out, and it's nothing I can really fault the lens for, even at this premium market price point. All right. So I think that tells you a few things about optics, and obviously I'm going to overlay a couple of photos. As I said, I only used it once or twice for actual portraiture, and just overall it didn't get so much use as the other Fujifilm lenses I got lent. So there's only so much to say and really present on that side of things. Two photos that really do stick out are, well, one that I got of the mayor of Brugge, Dirk de Fowl. He was kind enough to make some time so I could do a portrait session with him. And I popped this on with the teleconverter, got some extremely pleasing results. So that should be showing up somewhere here over the overlay, and I hope that gives you an idea what you can expect. And another one that pops up, if not two or three, I might dig through and see what I got and show it to you with these overlays. When the costumes of Brugge were in town, like they are every 2nd January, showing off their Venetian masks all over the city for free and looking beautiful. Well, I challenged myself in that crazy event situation with the 250 and the teleconverter, and I noticed, well, like you can see, I got a couple catches. I gotta say, with the autofocus being what it is on the medium format system right now, it sometimes made me miss a shot, you know, when people moved at the last second. So I wouldn't say this is the ideal just yet for sports and event photography, but it was promising to see how this lens delivered on the autofocus and obviously on the optical performance. So lots of good to say here. I only had so much time with it, so I'm going to keep this review fairly short. Yeah, it's solid. It's solid like my dog, even if he gets a little restless. Luckily, the Bokeh isn't nervous like he gets. All right, on that bad joke, I'm going to leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andy McSweeney of Andy McSweeney Photography and Photo Tour Brugge. If you are in the beautiful city of Brugge and you want to join me for one of my 3 daily walking tours in the open tip or 4 daily tours on the private tour tip, do feel welcome. You don't need your medium format camera. You can even show up with a smartphone and be an absolute beginner at this. Blake is available on request, even easier for private tours. And if you look in the description of this video, you will find a promo code for 15% off any open tour. If you want the same discount for the private tour, just drop me a mail and mention this lens and this video and I'll sort you out. All right, folks, there's less than 24 hours with this thing. I want to get a couple more sample shots so I can overlay them at the end of the video. Stay tuned for those. And beyond that, get out there and get shooting. See ya.